Motordrome for round 10 of the 15-round World Championship, and Hockenheim, like the Silverstone circuit where the British Grand Prix was held 2 weeks ago, is a very, very fast circuit. And an enormous fanatical German crowd has turned out, as they always do, for this event. Indeed, there are something like 100,000 spectators, most of them packed into the short circuit, and you'll see how it goes away later. There is Alan Jones, the reigning world champion, who is driving a TAG Williams car with a Ford Cosworth engine. There's his teammate, Carlos Reutemann, who's leading this year's World Championship, and Reutemann's an Argentinian. A very phlegmatic man. And someone who's not so phlegmatic is the more excitable Nelson Piquet, who's driving for Brabham, second in the World Championship last year and lying second in this year's World Championship. Piquet from Brazil, Gilles Villeneuve, who lives in Monte Carlo, is a French-Canadian. He drives for Ferrari. In fact, he's won 2 Grand Prix this year, in spite of the fact that his car does not handle at all well. There's young Alain Prost, who won his own Grand Prix in France in the turbocharged Renault, and it's a very, very quick motor car, as is John Watson's Marlboro McLaren MP4, in which he won the British Grand Prix at Silverstone 2 weeks ago, and John is right on top of his form. There's the championship table with Carlos Reutemann well away in the lead from Nelson Piquet. Reutemann's teammate Jones, the reigning world champion, third. Then Lafitte and Villeneuve tying for 4th place, only 3 points behind Jones. Now we come up to the grid, and in the bottom right-hand corner, the fastest man, Alain Prost. Second, René Arnoux, his teammate. Then Reutemann and Jones, Pironi in the Ferrari, Nelson Piquet in the Brabham, Lafitte and Gilles Villeneuve. Lafitte is 8th fastest, and there is John Watson, the next up. John Watson, 10th fastest. De Cesaris is well up on the grid. Then Patrick Tambay in the Ligier, the Talbot car. Then Mario Andretti. And down in 18th position on the grid, Jean-Pierre Jarier. Salazar, incidentally, is the last one to qualify, and he's the Chilean driver who drives an Ensign. So, away now on the warm-up lap, and there is the Hockenheim circuit. As you see at the bottom, the short circuit, as it were, which is joined by 2 enormously long legs, and right at the top of the diagram, what is called the Ost curve. And the lap record here at Hockenheim is held by Alan Jones, 1 minute 48.5 seconds, and that's a speed of 140 miles an hour. As you see, each of the 2 long legs which connect the Ost curve at the top and the twisty short circuit at the bottom are interrupted by 2 chicanes. Well, there is the Hockenheim circuit on the warm-up lap. There they go through the chicane, the second of the 2 chicanes, and then up to the grid again, and you can see the crowd. Most of it is condensed into the part at the bottom of the map that you saw, which is the short circuit. So Hockenheim is virtually 2 circuits in one, a short twisty bit and a much longer straight bit, and it's a very difficult circuit on which to set up the cars. We'll know soon who has succeeded best. The 2 Renaults right up there in the front, René Arnoux and Alain Prost. Then the 2 Williams cars of Alan Jones and his teammate Carlos Reutemann. Then Nelson Piquet, who crashed in Britain, and Didier Pironi in the Ferrari. In 7th fastest place on the grid, Gilles Villeneuve. In 8th place, Jacques Lafitte. So, all set to go then for 45 laps. It's very warm, it's dull overhead. And it's go. Now, are the turbos going to get away quickly or slowly? They're getting away well, but Reutemann is already through into 2nd place. Pironi is in 4th place behind René Arnoux. And the race leader with 45 laps to go as they go up to the first chicane on the first lap is the Frenchman Alain Prost, followed by Reutemann. In third place, Pironi, and Arnoux is right with him. And last is the arrows of Siegfried Sturr as the course cars, making sure that all is well, come up in the background. So it's Prost, Reutemann, Pironi, Arnoux, Piquet, the rest of them through. There is Hector Reback, Siegfried Sturr still last. Now up for on lap 1 to the Ost curve. And René Arnoux seems to be well down as they go round the tremendously fast Ost curve. That's about 11,000 RPM. It's 150 miles an hour around that corner. Then at this point in the track, believe it or not, they are doing nearly 180 miles an hour as they anchor up for the second of the two chicanes. That's third gear, out of it at 150 miles an hour. Then down to the Onco curve, the right-hander, where they burst into the sight of the spectators in the enormous serried ranks of the grandstand. And it's Prost leading Arnoux, leading Reutemann, I'm sorry. Jones is up, well up through the field. He's passed several drivers there. And there goes Hector Reback, number 6 in the second of the two Brabhams as we come up to the end of lap 1. Gilles Villeneuve, number 27 in the turbocharged Ferrari. He's in 6th position. And across the line into lap 2, Prost in the Renault leads Reutemann. Reutemann, the World Championship leader, he's well ahead in the World Championship, and it's Arnoux into the pits already. At this stage of the race, he's got a puncture. Look, his right rear tyre, his offside rear tyre is flapping on the wheel. He's got a puncture already. Somebody must have hit him in the early stages, and he gestures at the back of his car to warn his pit mechanics. Although they're all ready. There's Gerard Larousse with the headphones on, the team manager leaning over, talking to René Arnoux. And I noticed that in spite of the fact that he's only done one lap, 4.2 miles, they're changing all 4 wheels and tyres on the Renault. That's a normal precaution, but it's hardly necessary after one lap. Poor René Arnoux. That's Pironi's car. Didier Pironi in the turbocharged Ferrari. It looks as though he's burst a turbo, as he has done in previous Grand Prix. The Ferraris are very good, but they still haven't got them right, and it's still Alain Prost leading on lap 2. Reutemann behind him. In third position, let's see as they come out of the chicane, and it's Alan Jones in third position. Alan Jones has got ahead, of course, of Didier Pironi now that Pironi's blown his engine. There is Jones. Jacques Lafitte is in fourth position. There is Piquet in fifth place. In sixth position, it's Gilles Villeneuve in the Scarlet Ferrari. So there are the fourth and fifth men. In the blue Talbot Matra is Jacques Lafitte, who finished third in the British Grand Prix. There he is. Fourth position, Jacques Lafitte. Ahead of him, Jones, Reutemann and Prost. Behind him, Nelson Piquet. Gilles Villeneuve is coming through in sixth position. And I look across the course, Patrick Tambay is, there is Tambay in the second of the Talbots. John Watson is in eighth position, then Mario Andretti and Bruno Giacomelli. That's the first 10 on lap 2. There's Alan Jones and Piquet pulling out of Lafitte's slipstream and passing him. Nelson Piquet, the Brazilian, is obviously recovered from the minor injuries he had in that very nasty crash in the British Grand Prix when he went off at Beckett's corner and was temporarily trapped in his car. And Nelson Piquet goes up to fourth place ahead of Jacques Lafitte. Down to fifth goes Lafitte. There goes Alan Jones, and ahead of him are Alain Prost and Carlos Reutemann. So the turbocharged Renault, there they go. Here's Prost coming towards us. Tucked up behind him is Carlos Reutemann. Now this is very interesting because in the warm-up session at Hockenheim here earlier this morning, Carlos Reutemann had trouble with the engine of his race car. They decided to change it but they finished changing it so close to the race that Reutemann has had to go out in the spare car. That's Reutemann we're looking at now, and it's got a rather tired engine in it, but Reutemann is well up in second position, leading the way. And that Pironi walking in. Didier Pironi not had the best of luck in his Ferrari this year, the young Frenchman who won the Belgian Grand Prix in a Ligier last year and nearly won 2 other Grand Prix. But now, on lap 3, out of 55 incidentally, and that's a 190-mile race distance, 45 laps, my apologies, slip of the tongue there. We're on lap 3 in this 45-lap race, and it's Alain Prost. There he goes, the winner of the French Grand Prix, leading Reutemann, leading Jones. And Prost really ought to be able to control the race now, because his turbocharged 1.5-litre 6-cylinder Renault has got at least a 50 horsepower advantage over the Ford Cosworth engines of the 2 Williams cars of Reutemann and Jones. So he can look in his mirrors, pace himself, and even this early in the race, control it from the front. Prost, number 2, Reutemann, number 1, Alan Jones, then in 4th position, and he's pulled away from Jacques Lafitte. It's Nelson Piquet. Piquet wasn't all that quick in practice for him, 5th position, but don't forget ahead of him were 2 of the turbocharged Renaults. So there is Piquet, behind him Jacques Lafitte. There's the Frenchman in the Talbot Matra. And by the way, it's of interest that Ducar Rouge, the French team manager of the Talbot Matra team, has left the team, and it's not known whether his boss, Ligier, fired him or he resigned, but anyway, he was the strong man in the team, and Jacques Lafitte is having to do a lot of the team management as well. There goes Piquet. Piquet then in 4th position. Now, is he gaining anything? There's the 5th place man, Lafitte. Behind him in 6th place, Gilles Villeneuve. So it's Renault leading Williams, and there are the first 3. In 4th position, it's the Brabham of Piquet. In 5th position, it is the Talbot of Lafitte. In 6th position, it is the Ferrari of Villeneuve. Still in 7th place, it's the 2nd Talbot of Patrick Tambay, and in 8th position, John Watson. Piquet 4th. And Alan Jones is gaining. Alan Jones as into the pits. Let's have a look. That's Eliseo Salazar, the Chilean driver in the Ensign. I don't know what the trouble is. It may be time. There's Mo Nunn. Mo Nunn, the bald-headed man with the earphones, leads over the cars, and Jones is taking Reutemann. Jones fairly bundles his way past Reutemann as they go into the chicane. So up into 2nd position, it's still Williams' cars, 2nd and 3rd, but different drivers. Alan Jones, the world champion, passes the man who's leading the championship this year, Carlos Reutemann, up into 2nd place. And Alan Jones has had a pretty grim season. He started off well at Long Beach, then he was 2nd in Brazil and 4th in the Argentine, but in the last few races he's had the most terrible luck. And he desperately needs World Championship points to get himself back into contention against his teammate Carlos Reutemann, as Alain Prost in the Renault crosses the line. I listened to the Renault as it went across the line and into a new lap, and it sounds very healthy indeed. And hello, that's De Cesaris, Andrea De Cesaris, who does this so often. The young Italian, very, very excitable, and he's not at all popular in the Marlborough team. And Alan Jones now, he's determined to take the lead. He's right up with Prost into the chicane, and Alain Prost either gives it a touch of the right boot or, and and Piquet is closing up. It's getting very close indeed, because Piquet is now right up on lap 9. He's right up with Carlos Reutemann. And look how close the first, second, third and fourth are as they come into the stadium again. Prost, number 15 in the Renault. Jones, number 1, second in the Williams. Reutemann, you just caught a flash of Reutemann, and right behind Carlos, as we see Jacques Lafitte in the background. There goes Piquet, and there are the first 4, absolutely together, into lap 10. Now, if only Alan Jones can get a bit closer to Alain Prost, he can close up on the Frenchman and try to draft him and come out of his slipstream as Lafitte appears in the stadium. And where is Gilles Villeneuve? Gilles Villeneuve, who was in 6th position, seems to be missing. I'm looking across at the entrance to the stadium. I can't see Villeneuve, but I can see Patrick Tambay. So up into 6th position has gone Patrick Tambay. So both the Talbot Matras are in the first 6 places as Prost leads Jones, Reutemann and Piquet. Piquet through into 3rd position. Piquet's through into 3rd, ahead of Reutemann, so there is confirmation. I said earlier on that Reutemann had gone out in the spare car, and look how Jones is challenging. I said how Reutemann had gone out in the spare car with a tired engine, and it looks as though that may be his problem. I don't know, of course, I'm not driving the car, but it's obvious that something's wrong with Carlos Reutemann, and Jones is trying. My goodness, Alan Jones has really got the bit between his teeth as he challenges Alain Prost, again coming into the stadium, and he's right through. He's going to take the lead on the inside. He's got the inside line, and Alan Jones must get through here, but Prost is holding on, and what a super. Can you hear the crowd roar in the background? As Alain Prost, with a masterly bit of driving, refuses to give way to the far more experienced Alan Jones, who is driving in his 91st Grand Prix, whereas Alain Prost is only in his 21st Grand Prix. Well, you'll never see a more determined bit of driving than that between Alain Prost, and Alain Prost is not going to let Jones get through on the fast straight. He's moving about on the straight from side to side. It's a moot point whether that is on, but anyway, Prost is not going to give way. Prost, Jones and Piquet is closing up now. I think if only Alan Jones could get past, he might be able to break away. But Prost is controlling the race as Villeneuve did in Spain. If he can hold his line on the corners, and in comparative terms, as Carlos Reutemann goes through in 4th place, tour around the corners and then put his boot down on the straight, and Jones is trying again. And now Piquet is right with Jones. This is, it's obvious that Alain Prost is going slower than both Jones and Piquet could go if only they could get past him, but they can't. Derek Daly, number 17 in the march, puncture, offside front wheel. Nigel Mansell into the pits. We're getting some car mortality and tyre mortality. Villeneuve already there. So Mansell was 13th, Villeneuve, who was 6th. You remember I said earlier on I'd missed Villeneuve into the pits. Patrick Tambay then has gone up into 6th position. And we are now on lap 13 in this 45-lap, 190-mile German Grand Prix. And it's fast and furious at the front. It's been a magnificent Grand Prix season. Villeneuve blasts out of the pits, and Jones is harrying Prost every inch of the way, and they're catching up with Marc Surer in the Theodore. And now this is where Alain Prost will have to keep a very cool head. He knows that Alan Jones is right behind him. For that matter, Jones knows that Piquet is not so far behind him. Prost is closing up on Mark Surer, and Jones tries again as they leave the stadium and go up towards the first chicane. This is fifth gear. This is about 170 miles an hour. And there's Mark Surer with the high wing on the front of the Theodore. Now he will see that great snake of cars behind him. The Renault, the Williams, the Brabham, and then the second of the two Williams cars. And now Surer must move over. And if he doesn't, all four of them will close up. They're going to close up anyway. Surer is moving over a bit, but he drifts out as he exits the line. And Jones is trying. Jones is trying to take his advantage here. He's been able to close right up on the gearbox of Alain Prost. Now, is Surer going to move? Because Jones now has got a marvellous opportunity, and it does. Surer moves over. He's going to let Prost through. What's Jones going to do? They're coming right up to the chicane, and if Surer doesn't let Jones through, Jones could lose his second place. But he doesn't. But now Piquet's got a problem. As they come out of the chicane, this gives Prost and Jones an opportunity to break away, and Reutemann's right up with Piquet. Reutemann in fourth place, going to try and retake third. Piquet comes out of Surer's slipstream into the stadium again, and Piquet's through. Piquet's past Surer, still in third position. Is Reutemann balked or not? So, Prost, Jones, round the Sachs curve, into the Elf curve, round the Opel curve, into the straight in front of the main grandstand, with those 90,000 Germans in the grandstands and another 10,000 round the course. The 90,000 roaring them on, and Reutemann is right up with Nelson Piquet. Two battles separated by about 50 yards, I should think, visually, the two battles for the lead. Prost and world champion Jones. And look at Alan Jones. Now he's got his chance. He's going to challenge, coming up to the chicane again. But no, he just hasn't got the power to get through. And Reutemann is pushing Piquet, and Reutemann's through. Reutemann's got through on the chicane. Carlos Reutemann is back into third position. Well, that does surprise me. I said that Reutemann had got a tired engine, and so it didn't surprise me, first of all, when Alan Jones got past, and then when Piquet got past. So what is wrong with Piquet? That, of course, is the previous lap. Lafitte is in fifth position, and Hector Ribac has come up into sixth place. So both the Brabhams now, and we're looking at midfield men. That's Bruno Giacomelli and Salazar in the inside, passing it behind Bruno Giacomelli and Siegfried Starr in the arrows, and then Slim Borgud, and Giacomelli must be in trouble, because to be passed by Siegfried Starr you have to be in trouble, and Borgud is closing right up on Giacomelli. No disrespect to Siegfried Starr, but he's not doing very well this year in his first season of Grand Prix driving. And I saw Borgud go past. I didn't see, yes, Giacomelli's into the pits. I can see from my commentary box that Giacomelli's into the pits, and now, as that's Daly. Well, Daly's having a fraught race. First of all, he had a puncture. He's come into the pits. He's replaced that near side front wheel, and he went off the course there behind the chicane markers, but he's rejoined quite safely. And there is Bruno Giacomelli in the pits, having the tyres and wheels on his V12 Alfa Romeo changed. And by the way, look at the mechanic on the front tyre now, left front. That is the great Ermanno Cuoghi, the man who for so many years was Niki Lauda's chief mechanic. Down go the jacks, onto its wheels goes the Alfa Romeo, out of the pits roars Bruno Giacomelli. He did much better last season than he has done this. It's a new car and it's not as good as last year's. Lap 20 then. There's René Arnoux. He's rejoined, but now the leading three are starting to catch Alain Prost, the race leader's teammate. René Arnoux, the man who won 2 Grand Prix this year, who's done very badly this year. In fact, in 1981, Renault have only had 1 victory, and that was Alain Prost in the British Grand Prix. There's the first 6 after 20 laps, and as you see, there's only less than half a second between Prost and Jones. And for that matter, there is about the same time between Jones and Reutemann, so there's only 1 second separating the first and third after 20 out of 45 laps. Arnoux goes through, he's almost been lapped. Into the stadium again. Prost, Jones, Reutemann, Renault, Williams. Alain Prost driving a very cool race, because this is only his 2nd year of Grand Prix racing, and he's got 2 very experienced, enormously determined and very hard drivers behind him. There's Piquet coming into the stadium. There's still only about 3 seconds in it between Prost, who is leading, and Piquet is 4th. Wonderful racing, because we're not far off half distance. 25 laps to go in this 45-lap race. And now Alan Jones trying, and he's going to take Prost. No, he's not. That was the camera lens that fooled me. The cameraman shortened focus, and through goes Prost. And now Prost, Jones and Reutemann are going to have the same sort of problem as they had with Marc Surer, because they're closing up to René Arnoux, and they've got to get past cleanly. But René Arnoux is a very experienced man. He'll see them coming up in the mirrors, and dare I say it, he will probably let his teammate Alain Prost through, and then surreptitiously perhaps move over just that 6 inches or so that he needs to make it extra difficult for Alan Jones to get through. And they're coming up to the stadium now through the chicane. That's the 2nd chicane. Now the long drag down to the stadium at 160 miles an hour here in top gear. Villeneuve back into the race. And now it's Arnoux, Prost, Jones trying as they come into the stadium. Reutemann behind them, but still Arnoux has unlapped, and now Prost is going through, and Jones goes straight through the middle. Unbelievable. Well, that was fantastic. And look at the way he's pulling away, and hear the crowd roar in the background. Alan Jones is right back on top of his brilliant form, and it will be a very, very, very angry Alain Prost. Let's look at it again. Arnoux moves over, Prost takes him, and Jones takes both of them. Well, if I ever see a bit of motor racing like that again, I will be a very happy man. That was one of the finest passing manoeuvres I've ever seen. And just look at the way Alan Jones is now streaking away. And Reutemann and Piquet right up with Alain Prost. There they go. Well, I simply cannot get over that. Piquet is right up with Prost. Reutemann has not yet taken Arnoux. There goes Prost 2nd, Reutemann 3rd. Arnoux has been lapped, and therefore Alain Prost, there he goes, down the straight, into the chicane. Reutemann tucked right up into his slipstream. Piquet still behind Arnoux, and now he's taking him. Piquet, no, he's not, because Arnoux drifts across to the right to get the line right to go through the chicane and straighten it out as much as possible. I think the crowd is still gasping at the audacity of rightly number one, Alan Jones, on that previous lap when he sprinted through between Arnoux and Prost to take the lead. Bit of dust there. Alan just clipped the apex of the corner and threw up a bit of dust. He's perfectly okay though. De Cesaris's car parked in the background, and now determined Carlos Reutemann's going to have a go at Prost. And I can tell you that I've had a chance to look up into the sky, and I don't really like the look of it very much. there's some pretty heavy-looking clouds overhead. I just hope to goodness that it's not going to rain and spoil this marvellous scrap, because still, look how close they are. Jones goes through. Prost is second, Reutemann third, just behind him Nelson Piquet, and Arnoux dropping back, having been lapped. A very significant thing, of course, is that this is the third race where the Goodyear tyre people have been back in racing, and we've now got a situation where Alan Jones, who uses, it's the Williams and the Lotus and the Brabham teams only that are on Goodyear, compared with most of the rest of them on Michelin and one or two of them on Avon tyres. And Alan Jones, look at the front wheels of Alan Jones's car, because he's on the big 15-inch wheels as opposed to the 13-inch tyres that Nelson Piquet is using, both of them Goodyears. So it's Jones leading on Goodyears, then Alain Prost on Michelin, then Carlos Reutemann on Goodyear, then Nelson Piquet on Goodyear. So it looks as though the American firm are right back at the front of motor racing. Prost. And I've no doubt that Alain Prost is still seething inside that helmet of his at losing the lead to Alan Jones when he was momentarily balked by his teammate, of all people, René Arnoux. And now Jones is catching up on Gilles Villeneuve, the very, very determined Ferrari driver. And he needs to be determined in that car because it handles like a jelly on the corners, very fast on the straights. And now watch Alan Jones, he'll pop out of his slipstream and zap past him. Well, not exactly zap, because the Ferrari is very quick, but now Alan Jones will pull away on the chicane. Watch the Ferrari and see the way the gap between the beautifully handling Williams car and the Ferrari increases as Prost goes through, Reutemann goes through, Piquet goes through. First, second, third, fourth. Now look at the gap between Jones in the Williams and Villeneuve in the Ferrari. Villeneuve has, of course, been lapped twice now. He's been in for new tyres. That's the Renault 30, the 1981 car of Alain Prost. Much quicker and much better handling than last year's Renault 20. There it is. Well, the race is settling into a bit of a pattern now. Alan Jones, with that superb bit of driving, is really stamping his mark on the German Grand Prix, because he's lap by lap increasing his lead over Alain Prost. Carlos Reutemann can seemingly do nothing about the Frenchman in front of him, having succeeded in getting past Nelson Piquet. And it looks as though Nelson Piquet, there he is, number 5, is stuck in 4th position. And I've been noch 19 Runden means another 19 laps, and that means that there's 26 laps completed. Jones has lapped Siegfried Starr. There is Slim Borgood in the yellow ATS. And now Piquet is proving me wrong, because he's right up with it. He's taking, is he? He is. He's going through. Nelson Piquet proves me wrong. I said he couldn't do anything about Carlos Reutemann, and he's through. Nelson Piquet up into 3rd position. And Reutemann down to 4th place. In 5th place, it's Jacques Lafitte still. We haven't seen much of him. In 6th position, it's Hector Ribac, the Mexican, in the 2nd Brabham. So both Brabhams are still in the first 6 places. And Eddie Cheever is well up in the new Tyrrell, the 010. The car that he crashed in practice for the British Grand Prix as Alain Prost passes Slim Borgood. Well, I wonder, in this quite incredible race, because we all expected the turbocharged Renaults to do much better than they have done, because even though René Arnoux had to come in with a punctured tyre, he hasn't gone nearly as well since he put the new tyre on as I expected him to. Morgan moves over, lets Piquet through to lap him. Piquet in third position, pulling away now from Carlos Reutemann. Reutemann first, the second place man, Prost. Piquet's gaining. I was just saying when I interrupted myself that Nelson Piquet in this amazing race could well start to do something about Alain Prost. There's the gap between Jones and Prost, 7 3/4 seconds. There's the Frenchman, but what is the gap between Prost and Piquet? It was about 10 seconds earlier on. That was when Reutemann was third. Now Piquet's got past, and you can see for yourself that it's far less than 7 3/4 seconds now. The gap between Reutemann and Piquet is increasing. The gap between Piquet and Prost is decreasing. There's Reutemann fourth. He is lapped Villeneuve, and incidentally, when you get a chance, Reutemann's in trouble. Did you hear? I can hear Reutemann's engine fluffing. It sounds very, very harsh. That explains it. That explains why Reutemann's dropped back. I said earlier on he'd got a tired engine. He was in the spare car. It now sounds very, very tired indeed. And if it is, Reutemann's fourth place is in danger. Race leader, Alan Jones. Now look down the course for the yellow Renault. There it is. Prost behind Starr, and Piquet getting closer all the time to Prost. Prost is going to lap Starr, and that's Reutemann. He's coasting. Look at the smoke coming out of his engine. Is Carlos Reutemann's race run? It's certainly run from the point of view of doing well. It's run altogether. And so I suspect is his engine. Well, bitter, bitter luck. But in this unpredictable thing that is called Formula One World Championship Grand Prix motor racing, Carlos Reutemann has had more than his share of good luck this year, because in 18 races, this is only his second retirement. And in the other 16 races, he finished in the World Championship points, which means to say he finished either first, second, third, fourth, fifth or sixth. An incredible achievement. Not that that will be any consolation to him at the moment, of course. So Carlos Reutemann has lost his fourth place, up into fourth place now then, and I hope the German director lets us see something of him. Comes Jacques Lafitte, the Frenchman in the Talbot Matra, as irrepressibly on his way and utterly reliable. And is that Lafitte? No, it's not. It's Patrick Tambay. There's the Frenchman with X. Just a minute, let's listen.
10 laps now, the vibration from the rear of the suspension and the brakes are very long, so it's a wheel bearing.
Well, that's ex-Grand Prix driver Harold Ertl, nicknamed Hurtle for short, interviewing Patrick Tambay, and you heard what he said. As Patrick Tambay then, I would guess, out of the race, unlikely to rejoin. But listen to that. You heard it, I heard it. I hear Alan Jones's engine stuttering. I trust I'm not imagining things. I've said things like that before and been proved wrong, but I distinctly saw Alan Jones's head jerk. I heard his engine stutter, and that means that something is happening to interrupt the flow of petrol through to the fuel injectors. Power is being lost. Now let's keep a very, very careful eye, not just on number 5, Nelson Piquet, but on Alan Jones, number 1, the race leader. Well, there goes Salazar, there goes Prost, there goes Piquet. Where is Alan Jones in relation to this lot? Din on the side of Salazar's car is the name of a Chilean import-export agency that sponsors him. There is Riccardo Patresi's car. Or is it Star? No, it's Patresi's car. Riccardo Patresi out of a Grand Prix again. He too this year has not had the best of luck. And the bouncing car ahead of Alan Jones. Now let's listen. He's John Watson. John Watson in the red and white car, the man who won the British Grand Prix, is going to be lapped by Alan Jones. But as Jones comes into the stadium, let's listen again to his engine notes as he comes out of the right hand of the Opel curve. Listen. Well, it sounds better to me this time. Alan Jones's engine sounds better this time, so maybe it was some temporary imperfection or something holding up the fuel. Anyway, look back along the course, because now Watson in 10th place is about to be lapped by Alan Jones. And John Watson waves him through. And did you see that? Going through that chicane, and when they go through that chicane, they do it at 125 miles an hour. First of all the right and then the left, and Alan Jones still found time to take his hand off the steering wheel and give a calm acknowledgement to John Watson, saying, "Thank you for letting me through." Incredible. That is how good these Grand Prix drivers are. Now up to the second chicane and down the remaining part of the straight into the Onco curve. Third gear, 10,500 RPM, 125 miles an hour, and Alan Jones is approaching it now. Leading. Well, where is Prost? Look back along the course. Look for the yellow Renault. There it is. There's Jones. And it's a good... I would say it's about 8 seconds at least between Jones and Prost at this stage of the race. And at about 3/4 distance, that is a nice, healthy, comfortable cushion to have. And again, just that suspicious little rumpling of the engine note as Jones... And look at his head! The gap between Jones and Prost, watch the digital, stops at 10.4 seconds. There is the second place man, Alain Prost, number 15, 26 years old, 12 years experience, from Saint-Chamond. The man who earlier on in his life had to decide whether he was going to be a professional footballer or a professional racing driver, and he opted for the latter. And now he's won the French Grand Prix. There's Watson. Where is Prost? Look back. Looks to me as though the gap between Jones and Prost is increasing. And Nelson Piquet is still fairly statically in third position. There is Piquet going through. Jacques Lafitte quite a long way back now in fourth position. John Watson goes through in the Marlboro MP4 as Alan Jones takes, who is it? It's Jean-Pierre Jarier in the Osella. And Jarier has proved for the second race in succession that the Osella is not the poor car everybody thought it was, because he's succeeded in qualifying it, where his teammate Beppe Gabbiani, for I think the 10th time in 10 Grand Prix, has not succeeded in qualifying it. And I cannot see Signor Gabbiani staying on with Osella very much longer. Yet another lap completed. Alan Jones, world champion, on his way to his second Grand Prix win of 1981. He won the first World Championship race at Long Beach, second in Brazil, fourth in the Argentine, 12th in San Marino. Then he went off in the Belgian Grand Prix, but recovered to finish second at Monaco. Went off the course and finished just out of the points in Spain, 7th place. But then terrible trouble with 13 laps to go here. He had in France only 17th place, and he didn't even finish at the British Grand Prix. There is Prost. That's Slim Borgud, the ABBA-backed rock drummer, the Swedish driver, who is a much better driver than people have given him credit for recently. Ex-Formula 3 champion of Sweden, going very slowly indeed, and I should think from the signal that he's going to come into the pits. Yes, I can tell from the wide line he's taking. Slim Borgud in the ABBA-backed ATS, which has got a new team manager, Alistair Caldwell, an Englishman, who really worked wonders for ATS in the British Grand Prix, and under his control and Borgud's driving, the ATS finished in 6th. But there is Caldwell, incidentally, just leading over the car. As John Watson comes through, there's the man who won the British Grand Prix. He's been lapped, and as a matter of fact, he's been lapped by Piquet and Prost and Jones. There's Prost. The gap between Jones and Prost is 8.8 seconds, but look at Piquet. He's right up with Alain Prost, so Nelson Piquet has worked wonders with the Brabham, or is the Renault in trouble? And Piquet's taking second. Nelson Piquet takes Alain Prost in second place. Oh dear, poor Alain. It is not his day. First of all, he loses first place to Jones. Now he loses second place to Prost. Does that mean that the Renault is in trouble in the German Grand Prix as it was in the British Grand Prix? You remember in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, first of all, Prost went out of the race, then René Arnoux went out of the race. And I'm trying to work out why Nelson Piquet dropped back behind Reutemann. There's the answer. Look at the front of his car. Look at the front of his car. The near side tip, the tip of the near side front aerofoil of Nelson Piquet's car appears to have been knocked off. It's shorter. Perhaps we'll get a closer look at the car later. You may see it now. Compare the two sides of the aerofoil of Nelson Piquet's car, and if that is the case, and I'm sure it is, the handling of Nelson Piquet's car will have been affected adversely, so that could explain why he dropped back as he was working out how to correct the car's imbalance. And it could equally explain that, having worked out how to do it, he's now storming back into the race. Second position. The gap between Jones and Piquet, 5.3 seconds only. And it was well over 10 seconds. The man to watch at the moment is Nelson Piquet. John Watson in the background, still in 10th position. Piquet laps Elio De Angelis, who is just ahead of John Watson. In fact, John Watson's coming up through the field now. But there is the man that he's got everybody on the edge of their seats now, just as Alan Jones did when he shot through between Arnoux and Prost to take the lead. Nelson Piquet seems to have found a new lease of life somehow or other, and he's not only got past Alain Prost, but he seems to be closing the gap between himself and Alan Jones. And watch the surface of the track very carefully. Look at that gap in the trees and the sky. There's rain clouds overhead, and look at the tyres glistening. There is a very, very fine drizzle coming down as Alain Prost goes through the chicane. That drizzle is just dampening the surface of the motordrome at Hockenheim. This 4.2-mile lap. And if the car is at all uppity as far as handling is concerned, that could cause real trouble, especially for Piquet with that bit of his front wing missing. And he's right up with Jones as they come into the motordrome. The crowd roars because they sent another change. Alan Jones he must be in trouble. And he's waving his hand. Alan Jones waves at his pits, and Piquet's taking the lead. the third new leader. First of all, it was Prost, then it was Jones, now it's Alan Jones. Now, I'm sorry, it's Piquet and Borgood. Alan Jones, of course, in second position, and Slim Borgood off the circuit. Well, he finished sixth in the British Grand Prix. He's destined, obviously, not to finish in the German Grand Prix. And just as Alan Jones shot away from Alain Prost, as though he'd got an enormous rubber band attached to the front of his car, once he'd got past the Frenchman, Alain Prost is doing exactly the same thing and pulling away from Alan Jones. Sorry, Nelson Piquet. My apologies, everybody. Nelson Piquet is doing the same thing. And not only that, but Alan Jones is down to third position. Oh, there is something very definitely wrong with Alan Jones's car. Let me recap, because I'm sorry you must have got a bit confused. In the lead now, Nelson Piquet, who has passed Alan Jones. In second place, that man, number 15, previous race leader, Alain Prost, who had been passed by Alan Jones when Jones took the lead. Now, Prost, that we're looking at, is into second position, down to third place, has gone Alan Jones. The crowd roars again, because this is the first time that they've seen Alain Prost in second position ahead of Alan Jones. Nelson Piquet in the Brabham, on his way then to his... I must be careful, because I've said this sort of thing before, only to find I was wrong. And look at the stuttering Williams. See the nodding head of Alan Jones. I was right earlier on, and it must have corrected itself and come back again. I'm hazarding a guess when I say maybe Alan Jones has got the same thing happening to him here in Germany as happened to him at Monaco. There was a fuel pickup problem at Monaco, and Reutemann has had the same trouble in later races. And look how Jones is touring now. And this will be a very big worry for the Williams team, but the Brabham team aren't worrying about anything, because Nelson Piquet is now well away, on his way, number 5, to his 6th Grand Prix win, and his third of 1981, leading Prost by 2.7 seconds, with Jones another 5 seconds back, but Jones dropping back all the time. And Nelson Piquet on his way to his third win of 1981, his 6th win of all in his career, and this is only his 44th Grand Prix. Nelson Piquet, his leg still bruised after his crash in Britain, and the gap is increasing. Piquet now 6.5 seconds ahead of Prost. Is Jones going to hold that third position, or is Jacques Laffite going to catch him? Jacques Laffite, the Frenchman, in 4th place in the Talbot Matra. Hector Ribac now in 5th position in the second of the Brabhams, so the Brabhams are 1st and 5th. Eddie Cheever in the Tyrrell is avenging his crash in the practice of the British Grand Prix, and he's up into 6th position ahead of Elio De Angelis, and John Watson is now in 8th position with Jarier 9th, Andretti 10th, Villeneuve is in 11th position, and Jones into the pits. This is sensational, because there's only a couple of laps to go, and Alan Jones has decided that he's got to come into the pits. Now, it can't be for tyres. He locked up his wheels. Alan Chalice, the mechanic, the head mechanic, the burly man at the back of the car, speaks to Alan Jones. Off comes the engine cover. And it's the black box. They're ferreting about with the transistor box. It's something to do with ignition then. They're changing the black box at the rear of the engine of the Williams, and that's Alan Jones's trouble. And meantime, he's now right out of the points. because Lafitte has gone by as Alan Jones sits impassively there. And I noticed that Harold Ertl is not trying to interview him because he'd get a very short answer from Alan Jones if he did. But Alan Jones pointing at at the spectators, he's saying, you get out of the way because I'm coming out there at about 100 miles an hour, and out he goes. Alan Jones rejoins the race, but he's out of the points because Lafitte has gone up into third position. Ribback has gone up. Eddie Cheever has gone up. And so Alan Jones right down out of contention as Piquet goes through. He's lapped him. Only 2 laps to go for Nelson Piquet as Alan Jones with Alain Prost behind him. He's about to be lapped by Alain Prost. And you can see that Jones is going very, very slowly indeed, and I have a nasty suspicion that Jones is not going to run the full distance of the German Grand Prix. And it's a tragic repetition for Alan Jones of 1980 when he led the German Grand Prix, only to fail, having won it in 1979. And that means to say that Alan Jones's World Championship points are going to be very badly affected. I try to work out placings while I talk to you. All I can say is that Carlos Reutemann will still be in the lead of the World Championship, but Alain Prost is not doing himself any harm with World Championship points with his position at the present moment. Alain Prost in second place. There is the race leader, Nelson Piquet. And Piquet driving in his usual immaculate, smooth style. This ex-kart champion of Brazil who came to Britain. Watch the gap, see what the gap is between Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost in second position. The camera searches out Alain Prost, who has now lapped John Watson. 10.72 seconds is the gap between Alain Prost. They are on their last lap. Nelson Piquet is on his way to his third World Championship win of 1981. There he goes. And I won't say he could coast home, far from it, because 10 seconds is not all that much of a lead if you strike trouble in the closing stages of the last lap. But he looks very, very secure to me. The Brabham team are famous for their immaculate preparation and reliability. So let's watch Nelson Piquet, last lap, coming home to win as he goes up to chicane 2 at approaching 180 miles an hour for the last time. And as Eddie Cheever comes into our sight, and Cheever is in 5th place, he's just going to miss being lapped by Piquet, because into the stadium with a roaring crowd, they're welcoming the winner home, Brazilian Nelson Piquet, 28 years old, wins the German Grand Prix because he's now into the complex, into the stadium, into the finishing straight. Now he could kick out the clutch and still win. And Nelson Piquet takes the checkered flag to win the German Grand Prix. He waves to the crowd, as well he might do, because it's been a famous victory. And he's come back superbly after that crash in the British Grand Prix. Prost second, 11.5 seconds behind him. Lafitte takes the 3rd place. Nelson Piquet's teammate Ribback in a superb 4th place. Eddie Cheever a magnificent 5th. And John Watson, the British Grand Prix winner, gets the last World Championship point with his 6th place, a lap adrift, although all the other 4 behind Piquet and ahead of Watson have finished on the same lap as the race winner. Well, what's that do to the World Championship? There is the answer. Reutemann still there. Piquet, though, is still in second position, but Lafitte moves up to third, ahead of Jones, and Villeneuve is still fifth. And now then, from Germany, we go on to another German-speaking country for the next Grand Prix, the 11th out of 15 in the World Championship Series of 1981. Piquet takes the plaudits of the crowd, and we look forward to the next, and it's Austria. Welcome to the magnificent